What if you could take a step back and look at the world? Explore the line between certainty and doubt. You are listening to the Illumination Hour with your host, Ellen-Stallone. Hello everyone, welcome again to the Illumination Hour. I hope all of you are feeling a bit adventurous today because we are going to be taking a tour into the past. Now what does that mean? What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about time capsules, and I think we all have a general idea of what those are. Time capsules are a historic cache of goods or information, usually intended as a method of communication with future people and to help future archaeologists, anthropologists, or historians. They're sometimes created and buried during celebrations such as a World's Fair or a cornerstone laying for a building, or sometimes at other events. Sometimes people just make time capsules on their own and they hide them in places where they think nobody's going to find this, at least not for many years. And that's the whole point, right? Time capsules are about sending a snapshot or a message to the future. So what would you say to the future if you could send a message? What would be in there? Would you hide it in a bottle? Maybe in an artillery shell? Would you bury it under plaster in your wall? Or perhaps in the backyard? And what would be in there? Would it be a warning? Would it be a message of hope? Well, today we're going to go through a few time capsules that have been discovered recently that are just astonishing. And I think every time one of these time capsules is unearthed, we all take a step back and look at our lives in a different perspective. How different are our lives today compared to the snapshot that we're looking at? What were their lives like? How have things changed? Maybe we figure out a way that we want our lives to change and send that message to the future. In my opinion, time capsules are a statement of hope, of looking forward to the future, of thinking that maybe someday things will be different or they'll be better. It's hope in that you are leaving behind something that you know somebody is going to find in the future. And how do you want them to see you and your life, or the thing that you've left behind? There are some pretty cool time capsules out there. One that was found recently is dated back to 1795. And this is no ordinary time capsule. Yes, it's old, which in itself makes it special, but this was made by two very famous historical figures in American history, Paul Revere and Samuel Adams. The story goes like this. More than 200 years after Samuel Adams and Paul Revere first buried it in Boston, it took an hour to remove all the objects crammed into a tiny time capsule. Let's reflect on those numbers for a minute. 200 years? That's more than 2 lifetimes. And it took only an hour to remove everything that they had stored inside there. Like it had just been waiting for us to touch it for all that time. Perhaps the crowd knew that as they anxiously watched the unveiling, worrying that the items might not have weathered the years very well. Because one thing you have to remember if you're going to put together your own time capsule, things don't age very well, especially organic materials such as paper. There's all sorts of fungus and bacteria that can get into the container, and if moisture is added, then it's gone. It's not going to make it. The director of Boston's Museum of Fine Arts, Malcolm Rogers, said, Could we actually go through the whole box? Or would things prove too fragile to take out? It's like brain surgery, with history looking down on us. Piece by piece, Pam Hatchfield, head of objects conservation for the museum, removed each item, whispering, "Wow," as she first caught a glimpse of some of them. Among the stash Hatchfield removed from the 1795 time capsule, 5 folded newspapers, a Massachusetts Commonwealth seal, a title page from Massachusetts Colony Records, and at least 24 coins. And at the bottom, the most special piece of all, an inscribed rectangular silver plate, probably made by Paul Revere and engraved by him. It was the treasure at the end, but getting to it was a painstaking process. It took 7 hours to remove the time capsule from the Massachusetts State House in December, and more than 4 hours before Tuesday evening's ceremony for officials to loosen the screws that were holding it shut, and took place at the museum in front of a painting of George Washington. Hatchfield used a porcupine quill and her grandfather's dental tool to help her safely remove the contents of the 10-pound box, which was uncovered during repairs for a water leak at the State House. The box-shaped capsule was placed in the State House cornerstone in 1795 by Revere, the metalsmith, engraver and Revolutionary War hero, and Adams, the brewer and governor of Massachusetts, as well as William Scully, a local developer when construction began. Revere was responsible for overlaying the State House dome with copper. So it's no surprise that people suspect he was the one that engraved the silver plate. This time capsule, it was pretty small. It measured 5.5 by 7.5 by 1.5 inches. But here's the thing. This isn't the first time that this box has been uncovered. In 1855, during some other repairs, the time capsule was removed and its contents cleaned, only to be put back in the cornerstone for almost 160 years, with a few added objects. The box's materials were noted in reports at the time. This time, historians had the opportunity to go through the contents with modern tools. After its removal, December 11th, the box was taken to the Museum of Fine Arts, x-rayed, and given a thorough once-over. Rogers says that having an idea about what might be inside the box was nothing compared to actually seeing it. Though we knew a little bit about what was in the box, it was a moment of extraordinary excitement as this brass container, just the size of a cigar box, was slowly opened with surgical precision, and you suddenly found yourself in the presence of history. Newspapers inside the box were in amazingly good condition. The large number of copper coins inside might have helped protect the artifacts, since copper helps block the growth of fungus. It's almost as if they thought this through when they were putting together the contents. The collection of coins recovered from the time capsule included half-cent, 1 cent, half-dime, 10-cent, and 25-cent coins. Another set of coins included a pine tree shilling from 1652 and a copper medal showing George Washington. So, as amazing as all of these discoveries are, imagine being the person digging it up. Like was mentioned in the story, the whole world has their eyes on you as you are uncovering this mysterious, unique piece of history that has been hiding for over 200 years. That's gotta be a lot of pressure, and I know I would feel extremely nervous and probably get shaky hands. Luckily, the people who dug up these items were much more careful, and they're conserving all of the items, putting them in the State House Museum. I'd like to read what was in those newspapers, though unfortunately, they are not going to be unfolded and are going to be stored behind sealed glass so that nobody ever can. Supposedly, this is to preserve their integrity, but you would think that they could read what was on the paper, maybe publish it, so that way nobody else has to unfold it. After the conservation process is finished, all of these items will go on display at the museum, and eventually, The time capsule and its contents will be placed again in the cornerstone of the Massachusetts State House. One question still remains. Will officials add anything new to the time capsule before they put it back? The governor has wisely suggested that we just might, so we'll think about it. Isn't that just like a politician to answer with a maybe? Well, there'll be more for the future to explore. Perhaps when they have better tools, more futuristic tools, they can unfold the newspapers and read them, or look at the items that are stored in there and analyze them in a way that we cannot at this point. One thing's for sure though, Sam Adams and Paul Revere, I feel like they did us, as people of the future, a service by putting this together. Not only does it give us something to look forward to, but it gives us something to look back on. A time when we were still fighting for our freedoms, and yet everyday life still carried on. Perhaps it's something for us to reflect on more. But sending a few coins and newspapers to the future, that's kind of weak, don't you think? I mean, not really much exciting happens in the newspaper. I mean, who reads those anyway, right? And sure, we can look at coins and think, wow, those are cool, and they're worth a lot if you can sell them. But they don't really say all that much about your society other than they used money. What if you could send the entirety of humanity's collective knowledge to the future? Well, that is exactly what the Crypt of Civilization was created for. Most time capsules contain only a few trinkets or letters, but Oglethorpe University's Crypt of Civilization represents an audacious attempt to preserve all of human knowledge for posterity. The project was the brainchild of the university's president, Thornwell Jacobs, who believed it might serve as a valuable record for archaeologists in the distant future. Beginning in 1937, he converted an underground 20 by 10 chamber in the administration building into a museum of civilization, filled with everything from 640,000 pages of microfilmed books and religious texts to an early television, a container of beer, and a set of toy Lincoln logs. Oh, those are fun. I used to play with those. The vault even features a special language integrator to help teach English to whoever might find it. I wonder what that's like. Maybe it's a word next to a picture, like this is an alligator, and then it shows the picture of an alligator, the word alligator. You get the idea. Anyway, the entire hall was welded off behind an airtight stainless steel door during a ceremony in May 1940. Jacobs decreed that it should remain closed for 6,177 years. Why would he pick that amount of time? That's a weird, random number to come up with. Well, actually, he has a reason for this. 6,177 years is the same amount of time that was then thought to have passed since the beginning of recorded history. The crypt remains at Oglethorpe University to this day and is now more than 75 years into its long journey to the year 8113 AD. That is a long time to wait for sure, and I wonder if many of these items will still be preserved by then. I would love to be able to stick my head in there and look around. There is a picture, and I see rolls of paper, there's some stacks of discs, there's a typewriter, and there's also some dolls encased in glass, which I find a little weird. Why are we sending our dolls to the future? Maybe these are the idealized people, and this is better than sending pictures because they can pick them up and look at them? They are wearing fashion of the time, so if a picture is worth 1,000 words, what is a doll worth? 2,000? 5? One thing's for sure, we will all be long gone by the time this opens. If there was any way to see the reaction of people who open this crypt of civilization in 6,000 years, what do you think they would say? Surely they would go over every single item that's in this crypt very carefully, with surgical precision? What would they think about our civilization and the ones that came before us? Would they think that we are just and fair? Are we prosperous? Are we virtuous? Are we going down the right path? The respected physicist Albert Einstein, who worked on the Manhattan Project developing the atomic bomb, also had this to say about the scientific progress of his age. People living in different countries kill each other at irregular time intervals, so that also for this reason, anyone who thinks about the future must live in fear and terror. Was he right? Well, assuming that humanity doesn't destroy itself with atomic bombs or biological warfare, or kill off all of its food sources before this time, 6,000 years in the future, maybe they will say, well, they did their best. This is a pretty good collection. I don't know. I'm not a future person, but what I do know is that the only constant we can rely on in our lives is change. So surely in 6,000 years, humanity will have changed in such a way that we have no idea how they will be, what they will be like, what are they doing with their lives. One thing we do know is that if humanity is anything like humanity as it is today, they will look back on us and probably admire our hope and our courage for going through such horrible times and still sending out these messages that we are waiting for a better time and a better world. One place that you can reliably go to escape your world and get into a better one is in a book. So what better thing to put into a time capsule than a book? What about hundreds of them? That is what the Future Library is for. Scottish artist Katie Patterson's Future Library is a literary time capsule that will be a century in the making. Starting in 2014, so that was only 2 years ago. This is quite recent. Anyway, starting in 2014, a new author will be invited to submit a novel, poem, or other written text to the project each year for 100 years. In 2114, the entire collection will be published all at once, no doubt posthumously for many of its contributors. A forest of 1,000 trees has already been planted outside Oslo, Norway, to supply the paper for the printing. None of the entries will be available to read until the project is complete, however, and the writers are forbidden to reveal anything about their works other than the title. So it's a mystery. Canadian novelist Margaret Atwood submitted the first manuscript, called Scribbler Moon, in 2014, and British author David Mitchell published the second the following year. Their manuscripts, along with 98 forthcoming titles from other writers, will be held in a public library in Oslo until the official unveiling in the 22nd century. So they say this is going to be posthumously for many of its contributors. However, I feel like we are on the verge of some awesome biotechnology that will extend our lifespan. So maybe, let's say you decide you want to write a book and publish it in this future library 20 years from now. Well, let's say in 20 years you are 40 or 50 even. Even if that is the case, maybe there are life-extending drugs that can help you live until 150. If that's the case, you will be alive when this opens, and you will be able to read those books. One thing is for sure, though, this future library is so enticing. Books, pieces that are written, that are kept hidden, I can't stand it. I hope that I survive for this to be unveiled. Whatever is written in here, it's gotta be good, right? I mean, these are books that are being sent to the future. Whatever the authors wrote, I'm sure they put more time, thought, effort, and love into this than they have to anything else they've ever written. And books are usually a revelation on the author's experiences, their knowledge, their interests, what they see in people. what they see in themselves, what they see in the world. So perhaps people of the future will live in a different time where they don't see all of the things that we see today, or maybe they say things much differently, in which case our writings, our books, our poems, what we consider art, perhaps it will have some sort of internal effect on them that they've never really experienced. It's kind of like reading a love story for the first time and realizing how much you actually enjoy them. I mean, everyone makes fun of them, sure, because, it's so cliche, but once you read a good love story, you know it, and you know that feeling, and all you think about after that is the ideal romance. I mean, obviously, ideal doesn't actually exist in the real world, but it still gives you an idea of something to aim for, something that maybe you didn't consider before. But that's the thing about books, they reveal to you new worlds on many topics. One reason that I am so fascinated by science is that when I was younger, I read all sorts of books about dinosaurs and space and insects and fish and oceans. I fell in love. It's all fascinating to me, and I never would have had that aspect of my life develop if I hadn't read those books. So I'm really grateful to books in a way, and I think that any endeavor to capture as much knowledge and information, and particularly wisdom, experience, and perspective, that is something that is incredibly worthwhile, and I wish more people would do it. I think everybody has the material inside of them, in their own memories and experience, to at least write one book. Maybe they don't have the skill, but skill is something that can be developed. The material, though, it's all in there. You just have to learn to put it together. And I think if everybody wrote their own book, or even their own poem, we would all have something to learn from reading other people's writings. I'm a big proponent of people writing, picking up the pen, and taking their words down on paper and sharing their story, because everybody does have something unique, and we can all learn from those unique experiences, don't you think? Anyway, I think that maybe people from the past do have something to show to people in the future. Like looking back on the time capsule from Sam Adams and Paul Revere, what can we learn about that? Well, not only did a lot of inflation happen because they used to have like half-cent pieces and those were worth something back then. So we know that the economy's changed a lot. We know that the times have changed a lot because of the newspapers, and probably what was inside of them was a lot of Farmer's Almanac kind of stuff. We can also learn that people throughout time have shared a similar dream of what the future will look like. I mean, maybe the particulars have changed a little bit, but we all imagine, or we all hope, that the future is going to be a place that we want to be. It's going to be a better place. And we kind of have to have that dream. Otherwise, we lose the willingness to go on. Obviously, some authors, such as Aldous Huxley or Ray Bradbury, have had a dystopian future idea, but I think that's more of a warning than an actual belief. Another time capsule that I stumbled across in my research that I think it's interesting to me on a personal level because I have experience in this field, but also I find that psychology in general is incredibly fascinating, and the study of it throughout history has been very little up until about the 1900s. I mean, Sigmund Freud came around in the late 1800s, but the 1900s is really when the study began to pick up, when people started wondering, what goes on in your brain? How does it work? How does it function? What are these weird problems that we sometimes run into with mentally ill people? And what can we do about it? So, in the 1900s, people began answering that question. They began researching and trying new methods. In 1950, a mental hospital was built which contains film with a message for the future. The story behind this one is kind of interesting. Construction crews in Indiana were shocked to discover a time capsule from 1958 at a former mental hospital. And what's the most exciting part? It contains a film with a message for the future. A message about electroshock therapy and psychiatric drugs. Frustratingly, much of the audio from the film has been lost. I'm sorry to disappoint you folks, we can't listen to the whole thing. I will play you a part of it. What were they saying in that damaged part of the film? Was it a warning? This film begins with silent footage of the time capsule ceremony and the crowd that showed up to watch in the pavilion. Then we see two men addressing the camera with their message for the future. Based on the audio that survived, they're talking about some pretty heavy things. Electroshock therapy, which, by the way, is still used today. It's a really horrible kind of primitive way of dealing with patients with mental illness. You shock them, and maybe it fries their brain enough that they calm down afterwards, which, I mean, for some patients it is the right treatment, but for others they're kind of pushed into it. Also, they talk about the problems of the future. But there are large segments where we can't hear what they're saying, which is incredibly frustrating and disappointing. The man on the left begins talking about the new part of the hospital.
Today marks the cornerstone laying ceremony of the Bar Treatment Center. This is a building that we have been working on for 2 years. It's a building which we have spent much time in attempting to foresee in the future the things that are going to be coming up in the way of treatment programs. How well do you think we've solved our problem for the future?
At this point, the man on the right starts to speak, but we can't hear what he's saying. He speaks for a good 30 seconds before the guy on the left starts talking again, but we can't hear him either. Both men address the camera, taking turns for a good minute and a half before the audio returns, and it's a bit disconcerting given what we might have missed.
Electric shock treatment, as it is today, and it also will serve as a rest area in the day clinic period. Now, because of the space, the way it's laid out, this will be able to function under any circumstances that you might develop for treatment or program. For instance, we may someday, and only the people that open this time capsule will be able to say, we may go back to insulin shock or the development of some other drug techniques and so forth.
Here is where we should take a break and mention that insulin shock therapy was this practice where psychiatric patients were pumped with large doses of insulin on a daily basis to induce a coma that could last for weeks. So I don't know how much you guys know about this, but insulin basically controls your blood sugar levels. You have to have just the right amount of insulin, because too much insulin, your blood sugar goes way down. Not enough insulin, your blood sugar shoots through the roof. Either way, it's a really bad idea, and it's very unhealthy. It stresses out your liver. It's a bad time. Whereas electric shock therapy treatment has gotten a bad name, insulin shock therapy was not a procedure that showed much in the way of help for those suffering from mental illness. Putting them in a coma is more like getting them out of the physician's hair. It's just putting the baby to bed. Anyway, the man on the right continues.
Let me repeat that because of the development of this program with Dr. Williams, that we have developed a building which is completely flexible in all aspects to keep up with the changing pace of the mental health program.
The camera then goes back to the guy on the left.
It's our hope to use this building for the admission of all patients, where the patients will be admitted, receive all of their examinations, and a treatment program outlined for each patient. We hope that we'll be able to treat and improve many patients so they'll be able to go home from this building. Those who do not improve sufficiently to go home from this building may have to have some continued treatment in the other parts of the institution. We are designing in this building an outpatient clinic, which is the first outpatient clinic designed for this hospital. We trust that this will add much to our treatment program, that possibly we may be able to take care of patients on the outside without requiring hospitalization.
The man on the left then addresses the psychiatrists of the future, but we again lose large parts of the audio.
When the psychiatrists of the future open this time capsule, only they will be able to tell how well we've solved our treatment problem, not only today, but in the future. We are sincerely appreciative of what they'll have cameras at that time that they can run this film.
This hospital, the Bar Hospital, was closed in 1992, and the site is currently being converted into business and residential properties. The time capsule that the construction crew uncovered also includes other things you'd expect, like newspapers and photos. But this film for the future, as damaged as the audio may be, is one of those rare finds that we time capsule nerds love to hear about. The missing chunks of audio are lost to history, but hopefully they weren't a warning about something potentially life-saving. I mean, it's highly doubtful, but the possibility is always there. What do you think about this audio? I find it a little bit creepy, a little bit eerie in a way, because these are doctors who are working on a somewhat relatively new science. They're practicing techniques that they don't exactly know the full effects of. They're working on patients which they can't entirely understand. And even today, we still don't entirely understand what causes mental illness, what the experience is like, just daily living with a mental illness. All of the symptoms of the mental illness itself and the treatments on top of that. There are so many things to consider, and 60 years ago, surely they had less of an idea what they were doing than we do now, especially since psychiatry is relatively new compared to most other sciences. Also, it's something that has a lot more unknown variables. So these men with their hospital making this video of hope to the future, these men who were practicing a science that was almost like trying to see to the bottom of a lake. But after a certain point, the water gets too dark and murky, and we can't see the bottom. We can only guess what is down there, what we might see. Those few rare glimpses we get when we send a camera with a light attached, or maybe a scuba diver down there, they expose brilliant, beautiful things that we never imagined. So what does this mean for us now? I mean, surely we have better ways of treating psychiatric patients. We have better hospitals, better technology, better tools for analysis. Well, actually, a lot of what we do is very similar. We have new treatments, of course. We have new drugs, but some of the same practices are still in effect. What do you think people 200 years in the future will think when they watch this video? Which is now forever captured on YouTube, by the way, so it's not going to be degraded anymore. It's online. It's staying that way. But what will they think? Will they think that we're primitive and cruel for the things that we do to our mental patients? Or the ways that we treat them? Is there some ethical concern that we're missing? What if the patients don't want to be in care? Should we let them not be in care? Or should we make them stay against their will, as most mental patients are? that is something to think about, and the children of the future will have to deal with that problem and answer it, as our generation has answered that question the best that we can, which I don't really know if it's the best, because it seems as if we're just running off of the old narrative. So maybe something for us to consider is, what is it that we're missing? What more could we do? What could we be better at? What could we improve on? And this applies not only to mental patients in psychiatry, but to everything, don't you think? But enough pontificating for me. I have finally gotten to the most important segment of this program. This is my favorite time capsule story of all, and some of you may be familiar with it already, some of you may not. But this time capsule, not only does it span the globe, but it spans beyond our globe, to planets far outside of our solar system. Of course, I'm talking about the Voyager program. Now, some of you may be wondering, isn't that a satellite? How is that a time capsule? Well, I'll get to that eventually. First, I want to explain what the Voyager program is. So the Voyager program is a continuing American scientific program that employs 2 robotic probes, Voyager 1 and 2, to study the outer solar system. They were launched in 1977 to take advantage of a favorable alignment of Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. And they're favorable because as the probes passed them, they were kind of shot along and not caught up in the gravity fields of those planets. And currently, these probes are exploring the outer boundary of the heliosphere and off into interstellar space. Although their original mission was to study only the planet systems of Jupiter and Saturn, Voyager 2 continued on to Uranus and Neptune, and both Voyagers are now tasked with exploring interstellar space, which basically is the space beyond our solar system. Their mission has been extended 3 times, although I assume that the missions are going to be continuously extended, because it's not like you can just turn these things around and fly them back home. No, you want these things to continue going out as far as they can and sending back information, because there are all sorts of things out there in space that we have yet to encounter. Both the probes continue to collect and relay useful scientific data. Uranus and Neptune have not been visited by any other probe other than Voyager 2. Because of this mission, we as humans for the first time were able to extend our reach out to Uranus and Neptune, planets that we had previously never reached. We could only catch glimpses of them with high-powered telescopes. On August 25th, 2012, data from Voyager 1 indicated it had become the first human-made object to enter interstellar space, traveling further than anyone or anything in history. As of 2013, Voyager 1 was moving with a velocity of 11 miles per second relative to the Sun. That's an incredible speed. But out in space, with there being so much empty space, that doesn't mean that much. It's been traveling at 11 miles per second, and yet it's been flying since 1977, and has only recently extended out past our solar system. Voyager 2 is expected to enter interstellar space this year, 2016, and its plasma spectrometer should provide the first direct measurements of the density and temperature of interstellar plasma. Ooh, isn't that exciting? I've always wondered what interstellar plasma is. Data and photographs collected by the Voyager's cameras, magnetometers, and other instruments revealed previously unknown details about each of the giant planets and their moons. Close-up images from the spacecraft charted Jupiter's complex cloud forms, winds, and storm systems, and discovered volcanic activity on its moon Io. Saturn's rings were found to have enigmatic braids, kinks, and spokes, and to be accompanied by a myriad of ringlets. At Uranus, Voyager 2 discovered a substantial magnetic field around the planet and 10 additional moons. Its flyby of Neptune uncovered 3 complete rings and 6 hitherto unknown moons, as well as a planetary magnetic field and complex, widely distributed auroras. I think that's one of the most romantic thoughts, is to see a beautiful rainbow of aurora on an alien planet. I would love to see that. Voyager 2 is still the only spacecraft to have visited the ice giants. And the ice giants, just in case you're unaware, are the planets Uranus and Neptune. They're called ice giants because they're composed mainly of heavier elements such as oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, and sulfur. The Voyager spacecraft were built at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California, and they were paid for by NASA, which also paid for their launching from Cape Canaveral, Florida, their tracking, and everything else concerning the space probes. They were originally conceived as part of the Mariner program, which eventually formed into the later renamed Voyager program because it was thought that the design of the 2 space probes had progressed significantly beyond that of the Mariner family to merit a separate name. If you ever read into the Voyager program, it's really fascinating. These probes have discovered so much about space. Before these were sent out, we never had a clue. We never even guessed at the strangeness that existed within our own solar system. This is our home. We humans have lived here for thousands and thousands of years, and up until the past few decades, we had no idea what was going on in the space just around us. And these Voyager probes, well, they've revealed quite a bit. But it's not only their discovery that makes them so fascinating. Perhaps the Voyager probes are a time capsule in and of themselves because they take these images of space, they collect all of this data. It's like they're just fishermen throwing out nets trying to catch whatever they can. And then they send back that data to us here on Earth. We go over it, we analyze it, we learn things about places that we never have gone and never really can go because it's too far away for one lifetime. By the time the information reaches us, though, it's already old. And not that space changes all that much or that there's new things happening in space close to us besides maybe the occasional flying asteroid. But still, it's an old satellite that's sending us new information, which what more could you ask for from an old thing, right? Well, like I was saying earlier, the reason that I'm so excited about the Voyager mission is because on this probe, literally on the side of the Voyager probe, there is a disc that is made of gold. And on this disc is a compilation of humanity. The Voyager Golden Records are phonograph records that were included aboard both Voyager spacecraft launched in 1997. They contain sounds and images selected to portray the diversity of life and culture on Earth, and they're intended for any intelligent extraterrestrial life form, or for future humans who may find them. Neither Voyager spacecraft is heading towards any particular star, but Voyager 1 will pass within 1.6 light-years of the star Gliese 445, currently in the constellation Camelopardalis. It will pass by the star in about 40,000 years, which is a ridiculously long time, and we won't be around to respond even if these intelligent extraterrestrials do find the golden disc. But it doesn't matter. This is us sending the sounds and sights of our life, and we're just throwing it out there into the interstellar winds and hoping that somebody somewhere catches it and appreciates it. Carl Sagan, who is not only an amazing scientist, but he was the head of the committee that put together this disc. He noted that the spacecraft will be encountered and the record played only if there are advanced spacefaring civilizations in interstellar space. But the launching of this bottle into the cosmic ocean says something very hopeful about life on this planet. Thus, the record is best seen as a time capsule. The contents of the record were selected for NASA by a committee chaired by Carl Sagan of Cornell University. The selection of content for the record took almost a year. Sagan and his associates assembled 116 images and a variety of natural sounds, such as those made by surf, wind, thunder, and animals, including the songs of birds and whales. To this they added musical selections from different cultures and eras, spoken greetings in 55 ancient and modern languages, and printed messages from U.S. President Jimmy Carter and UN Secretary General Kurt Waldheim. The record also includes the inspirational message Per aspera ad astra in Morse code. So for those of you who are wondering, Per aspera ad astra, or less commonly, ad astra per aspera, is a popular Latin phrase meaning through hardships to the stars. Isn't that touching? Just the thought of it brings a tear to my eye. Alright, keep it together, Ellen. So a lot of the images included on this disc are of scientific interest. They're mathematical, and they show physical quantities of atoms and the solar system and planets and DNA, human anatomy, and reproduction. Care was taken to include not only pictures of humanity, because we don't want to seem like the egocentric primates that we are, but also some animals, insects, plants, and landscapes. Images of humanity depict a broad range of cultures. These images show food, architecture, and humans in portraits, as well as going about their day-to-day lives. Many pictures are annotated with one or more indications of scales of time, size, or mass. Because if you think about it, time probably does not pass at the same rate at all areas of space. Time, as we know now, is relative according to gravitational fields as well as speeds that you're traveling. Size could vary a lot as well. Maybe these intelligent beings that intercept this disk are living on a planet that has much lower gravity than ours, and because of that, they're 4 times our size. Maybe they think we're giants too, until they look at a scale and realize that, oh, we're kind of tiny. In which case they find the directions to our solar system there on the disk, and then they fly over here to Earth and take us over. I don't really think that's going to happen. I think that any being that's intelligent enough to intercept and understand this disk, they're not going to be interested in warring with us or destroying us. There are plenty of other asteroids and planets that they can get their natural resources from. Come on, why would they choose us? We would only cause more destruction for them. And the cost of their natural resources would be higher because they would be dealing with war. So I think the whole theory about alien life wanting to destroy us is not true. If anything, they probably don't want anything to do with us because we're not intelligent enough yet to realize that we don't need war. If they ever did contact us, I sincerely believe that it would be a message of good faith, that they would be reaching out to us in a sort of partnership so that we could learn and grow from the different experiences that we could gather from our diverse cultures. The musical selections are also varied, featuring artists such as Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Stravinsky, Guan Pingu, Blind Willie Johnson, Chuck Berry, Kesarbai Kerkar, and Valia Balkanska. The inclusion of Barry's Johnny Be Good was controversial, with some claiming that rock music was adolescent, to which Carl Sagan replied, "There are a lot of adolescents on the planet." Wise words indeed. There are a lot of adolescents on the planet. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if 1 in 5 people on this planet love that sort of music. The selection of music for the record was completed by a team composed of Carl Sagan, Linda Salzman Sagan, Frank Drake, Ann Druyan, artist John Lomberg, and Timothy Ferris, who was an editor for Rolling Stones at the time. The most interesting thing that is on this golden record, at least in my opinion, is the hour-long recording of the brainwaves of Anne Druyan. During the recording of the brainwaves, Druyan thought of many topics, including Earth's history, civilizations and the problems they face, and what it was like to fall in love, because at that time she was falling madly in love with Carl Sagan. So after NASA had received criticism over the nudity on the Pioneer plaque, which it wasn't nudity. Okay, yes, it was a naked man and women, but it wasn't like it was pornography. It was just line drawings of a naked man and woman. The agency chose not to allow Sagan and his colleagues to include a photograph of a nude man and woman on the record. Instead, only a silhouette of the couple was included, which is freaking ridiculous if you think about it, because people's aversity to nudity is highly contextual. Throughout history, people have been pretty comfortable with being nude around one another, and let's just be honest, we all have bodies, we all have the same body parts. I mean, it's not that weird to see a naked man and woman, or at least it shouldn't be so stigmatized. I think that's what leads to a lot of bodily discomfort and self-consciousness, is that we don't feel comfortable with our own bodies. And we should, especially when it comes to explaining who we are to these alien civilizations, or even to future humans who may have altered their bodies in such a way that they don't even look the same anymore. Maybe they've surgically implanted all sorts of robotic arms and things. Will they remember what normal, natural humans look like? Anyway, however, the record does contain diagram of vertebrae evolution by John Lomberg with drawings of an anatomically correct naked male and naked female showing external organs. Oh ho ho, that's so scary. We can't show external organs. I hope these aliens don't think that we're prudes. The 116 images are encoded in analog form and composed of 512 vertical lines. The remainder of the record is audio, designed to be played at 16 2/3 revolutions per minute. Here's something interesting. Carl Sagan also suggested that the Beatles song Here Comes the Sun be included on the record, but the record company EMI that held the copyrights to that song declined due to copyright concerns? I'm sorry, but in 40,000 years, when this record is found, do you really think anyone's going to give a shit about the copyright concerns of the Beatles' Here Comes the Sun? Don't think so. I mean, I don't think that most people really give a shit about copyright concerns as it is now, because the internet is basically a massive open source of information. We can listen to and get for free whatever we want, including the Beatles songs. So, anyway, that's just my biased opinion, but I want to go back to this Voyager record, and of all the things that could have been included on it. President Carter says about this recording, "We cast this message into the cosmos. Of the 200 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy, some, perhaps many, may have inhabited planets and spacefaring civilizations. If one such civilization intercepts Voyager and can understand these recorded contents, here is our message. This is a present from a small, distant world, a token of our sounds, our science, our images, our music, thoughts, and our feelings. We are attempting to survive in our time so that we may live into yours. We hope someday, having solved the problems we face, to join a community of galactic civilizations. This record represents our hope and our determination and our goodwill in a vast and awesome universe." So we send out this satellite, this probe, this golden disc, and it contains so much information about life. But it can never contain all of the information. I mean, no single person, no group of people can contain all of the information that humanity as a whole has to offer. Things get really nitpicky when you start to think about what you're going to include on a record that you're sending out to space. What would you have put on this golden record if you could have chosen? Now keep in mind, you only have a limited space. There's enough room for some images and some music and a lot of mathematical data, but you can put anything that you can think of on there. What would you include? Would it be things that are meaningful to you personally, or to all of humans, to life? As this golden track flies through the dark, misty abyss of space for millennia being untouched. Now, I'm going to play for you some of the sounds that are contained on this record. And I want you to let me know if you think that this is an accurate representation of what humans are like. And if it's not, what would you have put on this record? All right, now I'm going to leave you to it. Just so you know, this audio was recorded in 1977, so just imagine that you've been transported back in time to that era, and you are now on the panel to put together this soundtrack. So, here it is.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Hola y saludos a todos.
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
Oh, come on now. Be good boys. Be good boys. Be good boys.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening to the Illumination Hour. This has been me, your host, ellen-stallone. You can email me your thoughts, comments, and questions to illuminationhour@gmail.com. Thanks, everyone. See you again next week.